Deep within the frozen forest of Kamyshin, a horrifying discovery shatters the winter silence as a hidden grave slowly reveals its dark secret. The rigid hand of a Soviet war veteran juts out from the white crust, pointing silently toward a brutal and unpunished crime. Tightened around the victim's neck is a thick medical tourniquet, the cruel instrument utilized by the shadows to extinguish a human life. A dark, thick black liquid resembling ink slowly bubbles from the hidden trauma beneath the heavy fabric, staining the pristine winter snow. This is the grim reality of a calculated execution, a cold-blooded murder disguised by the harsh and unforgiving Russian winter wilderness. Welcome back to Truth Crime. I am your guide through the darkest corridors of history, where real horrors leave permanent ink on paper. Today, we unearth a chilling conspiracy from 1990, a terrifying scheme that systematically targeted the most vulnerable members of society. In the Volgograd region, the small town of Kamyshin remained quiet until a local hunter made a discovery that changed everything forever. The year was 1990, a period of deep economic anxiety, when an ordinary hunting dog led its master deep into the pines. The animal scratched at the earth, barking into the cold air, until the hunter noticed something terrifying beneath the white surface. Militia investigators rushed to the isolated forest site, clearing the heavy snowdrifts to uncover the frozen body of an elderly man. The head of the Criminal Investigation Division, Valery Zemlyanov, personally oversaw the recovery operation under the bleak winter twilight. The victim was identified as Mikhail Tropenin, a lonely pensioner who had vanished 2 weeks earlier after leaving for a local shop. A neighbor had raised the alarm when the quiet old man never returned to his modest, plant-filled ground-floor apartment. Detectives entered the home of the deceased, searching for any clues that could explain why he was killed 20 kilometers away. Inside the flat, everything was arranged with precise care, showing the neat hand of a man living entirely alone with his memories. Among the personal papers, a death certificate revealed a deep personal grief, the loss of his beloved wife some years prior. But it was a small paper book found inside a desk drawer that immediately caught the experienced eyes of the state investigators. The official savings book recorded that just 2 weeks before his disappearance, Mikhail had withdrawn his entire life savings from the bank. 1,000 rubles, an immense sum gathered over decades of hard labor, had been completely emptied from the state account. Why would a cautious old veteran suddenly empty his account, only to end up strangled and buried deep inside a lonely forest? Senior investigator Viktor Volkov knew this was no random act of violence, but a cold trap designed to exploit the elderly. A critical piece of evidence emerged from the kitchen table, a handwritten note scrawled on a scrap of lined paper. The message read, "Uncle, have some conscience. I know you are inside and refusing to open up. I need help desperately." This aggressive message pointed directly to the victim's nephew, Yegor Somov, a 34-year-old unemployed man with a dangerous reputation. Somov was known to local authorities as a heavy gambler who owed massive sums to ruthless card sharps in the region. Militia officers went to Somov's ground-floor apartment, but the door remained locked, and neighbors claimed he was hiding from debt collectors. Witnesses reported that Somov only left his residence at night, crawling carefully through the window pane to avoid being seen. Investigators set a silent stakeout around the building, waiting through the freezing darkness until the window frame began to creak open. The suspect emerged into the snow, dropping straight into the waiting hands of operational officers who pinned him to the ground. Inside the bleak interrogation room, Valery Zemlyanov placed the crimson gambling ledgers directly in front of the silent, trembling nephew. Yegor Somov stared blankly at the cold wooden surface, his smooth white head twitching slightly under the buzzing light. The suspect vehemently denied harming his uncle, weeping hysterically while claiming he was merely begging for financial assistance. While Somov lacked a verified alibi for those crucial winter nights, forensics could find no physical traces tying him to the gravesite. Suddenly, the case took an unexpected turn when the elderly neighbor remembered seeing two suspicious strangers near Mikhail's door. The mysterious visitors carried a heavy professional leather satchel, confidently introducing themselves to the lonely veteran as documentary filmmakers. They told the old man they were filming a grand historical project to honor forgotten heroes of the Great Patriotic War. Mikhail Tropenin's cautious guard immediately dissolved into deep emotion, deeply moved that his personal battlefield sacrifices were finally recognized. The older man wept silently as he recalled the brutal winter slaughter near Rzhev, where his entire infantry platoon perished. One of the calculated visitors slowly extracted a portable video camera, pretending to document the old soldier's heartbreaking testimony. The false filmmakers listened with perfect performative sympathy, nodding solemnly as their trap closed tighter around the victim. They scheduled a follow-up interview for 2 weeks later, promising to return with premium chocolate confections to celebrate the premiere. As Valery Zemlyanov reviewed these chilling details, a disturbing pattern emerged that suggested the presence of professional apex predators. Militia stations checked missing persons records across the entire Volgograd district, fearing Mikhail was not their only target. The urgent search led investigators directly back to the snowdrifts of the original primary crime scene area. A systematic, wider sweep of the frozen forest terrain was launched, with officers probing deep into the treacherous mud. Just 50 meters from the veteran's shallow grave, a search rod struck a heavy, unyielding obstruction beneath the snow. Shovels frantically cleared the frozen earth, revealing a second decomposed body, stripped completely of its upper heavy winter clothing. Tightened into the neck fabric of this second tragic victim was an identical pink rubber medical tourniquet. The signature method of execution left absolutely no doubt that a single calculated death conveyor was operating in Kamyshin. The second body was rapidly identified as 66-year-old Alexei Nikishin, another lonely pensioner who disappeared 1 month prior. An investigation into Nikishin's background revealed a crucial detail. He had recently sold his private summer dacha allotment. Toàn bộ lợi nhuận từ việc bán đất đã được gửi trực tiếp vào một tài khoản tiết kiệm nhà nước tiêu chuẩn trước khi biến mất hoàn toàn. Just like Mikhail, Nikishin had cleared his entire account balance immediately before stepping out into his ultimate doom. Interviews with Nikishin's former associates revealed that he too had been visited by a well-dressed representative from the state. A young male stranger in a sharp business suit and leather coat had knocked smoothly on Nikishin's door one evening. The visitor introduced himself as a senior assistant to a prominent regional deputy, carrying papers decorated with official stamps. He offered the old man exclusive access to a secret government investment fund reserved only for highly respected citizens. The fraudulent scheme promised an impossible 15% return on paper rubles deposited directly with the deputy's courier. Nikishin had hesitated for days, dreaming of buying a rare Japanese video system to comfort his remaining lonely years. The tempting offer of 15% returns on state currency completely blinded the elderly man, pushing him toward a fatal financial transaction. Alexei Nikishin left his concrete flat with his green savings book tucked neatly inside his winter coat, walking toward the central bank branch. Inside the state banks, the air was cold and filled with the heavy rhythmic thumping of mechanical ink stamps hitting paper documents. The elderly veteran handed his document through the small cage window, waiting patiently as the clerk counted the heavy piles of rubles. Thick bundles of printed currency were slowly pushed across the counter, representing the absolute entirety of Nikishin's life savings and land profits. With the cash safely packed inside a brown paper parcel, the old man stepped out into the freezing wind, completely unaware of the wolves. The elegant deputy's assistant was waiting smoothly at the street corner inside a dark luxury vehicle, its exhaust vapors freezing instantly. Nikishin entered the car without a single trace of hesitation, handing the heavy parcel over to the polite stranger in the front. The vehicle drove away from the bright city lights, moving smoothly toward the isolated dacha settlements, hidden deep inside the dark forest. As investigators documented the tragic fate of Kamyshin, Valery Zemlyanov ordered a complete audit of all real estate sales in Kamyshin. Militia detectives searched for any common links, looking for a bureaucratic leak that allowed the predators to select their wealthy victims. Before a leak could be found, a desperate family entered the central precinct, reporting the sudden disappearance of another beloved father. Oleg Bondarev explained that his 70-year-old father, Vasily, had completely vanished after boasting about a highly profitable cooperative business investment. Vasily Bondarev had spent 40 years saving every single ruble, terrified that the rising economic inflation would turn his money to dust. A charming cooperative agent had visited the vulnerable pensioner, using detailed hand-drawn charts to demonstrate the collapsing value of state currency. The professional con man promised that by purchasing shares in essential winter commodities, Vasily's savings would be perfectly preserved forever. To seal the illusion, the polite predators even drove the old man to an expansive warehouse packed with heavy textile goods. Vasily Bondarev walked between the towering crates, completely unaware that the facility was rented for just 3 days using stolen credentials. Inside the heavy fabric bags, there was no valuable clothing or scarce winter commodities, only industrial trash and shredded scrap paper. Convinced of the project's legitimacy, Vasily withdrew 5,000 rubles, placing his entire life's labor into a heavy leather bag. The old man vanished into the dark pines that very afternoon, leaving behind a frantic son and an entirely empty flat. Oleg entered his father's apartment, discovering that a rare and highly valuable religious icon had been stripped directly from the main wall. The missing antique icon was an irreplaceable family relic, a treasure that the calculated killers could not resist attempting to liquidate. Valery Zemlyanov immediately deployed a dense network of local criminal informants, placing the local antique black markets under intense secret surveillance. Within 48 hours, an informant reported that a well-dressed young man was quietly offering a rare silver icon for cash. Militia Trinsat followed the suspect's movements through the gray winter streets, tracking him back to a modest apartment building in Kamyshin. The suspicious seller was officially identified as Andrei Martinov, a seemingly respectable family man with absolutely no prior criminal record. Martinov lived quietly with his young wife and 2 small children, working an ordinary job while hiding a terrifying secret life. Detectives initiated a secret background investigation, discovering that Martinov had recently purchased a private dacha allotment near Sestrenki village. The private country plot was located exactly 2 kilometers away from the forest site where the first 2 bodies were unearthed. Valery Zemlyanov ordered an immediate operational deployment around the isolated country house, planning a synchronized multi-angle assault to trap the predatory gang. Operational Trinsat units crawled through the deep snowdrifts under the bleak twilight sky, cutting off every potential escape route. Inside the quiet dacha cabin, a single bare yellow light bulb flickered over a table littered with forged documents. Andrei Martinov sat calmly by the cold iron stove, examining the stolen antique silver icon with calculated, greedy precision. Forensic evidence of their calculated crimes lay completely exposed on the counter, including bottles of liquid sedative medications. Zemlyanov raised his featureless hand to signal the strike team, his breath condensing heavily into the freezing night air. With a sudden explosive force, the tactical unit smashed through the wooden window frames and front entrance simultaneously. The calculated ringleader was instantly thrown against the wooden floor, his wrists pinned behind his back in iron cuffs. Martinov offered absolutely no physical resistance, remaining completely silent as the heavy leather bag of currency was discovered. A meticulous search of the property commenced, as investigators systematically disassembled every square inch of the isolated country estate. Detectives pulled apart the heavy wooden wall panels of the dacha, searching for hidden compartments containing more stolen wealth. Hidden inside the dark wall cavity was a second pink rubber medical tourniquet, identical to the cruel murder weapons. Forensic officers carefully lifted the rubber band with metal tools, placing the crucial evidence into a clean plastic container. Further search inside the floorboards revealed a bundle of heavy linen cord, the material used to destroy their final victim. The heavy clothesline cord was encrusted with dried dark grime, matching the deep ligatures on Vasily Bondarev's throat. A leather box hidden beneath the iron stove contained a horrifying collection of military decorations belonging to Mikhail Tropenin. The state medals included the legendary Order of the Red Star, brutally torn from the veteran's uniform during his final moments. As the cold evidence accumulated, Andrei Martinov was brought back to the state station for intensive, round-the-clock questioning. Inside the stark room under the buzzing tube light, the ringleader sat motionless, his blank face showing absolute indifference, while Martinov maintained his icy silence. His young, terrified wife began to crack under the heavy psychological pressure. She naively believed her husband was conducting a highly successful private shipping business with his close former school friends. With trembling movements, she provided detectives with a detailed list containing the full names and addresses of 5 regular associates. The list included his closest childhood classmate, Serdyuk, along with 2 sets of athletic biological brothers from the district. These young men were well-educated individuals with excellent athletic conditioning, many holding exemplary recommendations from local state factories. Valery Zemlyanov realized that to prevent any warnings from spreading, he had to launch a synchronized multi-site arrest operation. 6 separate tactical strike groups were assembled in absolute secrecy at the Central Militia headquarters before midnight. The operational synchronized strike was executed precisely at 2 a.m., smashing into 5 separate residential flats across Kamyshin. The coordinated raid caught the remaining gang members completely by surprise, pinning them down before weapons could be reached. By dawn, all 5 suspects were securely locked inside separate isolation cells at the Central State Investigation Department. Within 2 hours of systematic separate interrogations, the younger accomplices began to crack, fully confessing to their horrifying roles. The dynamic interrogations quickly forced the criminal classmate, Serdyuk, to detail the precise mechanism of their cold-blooded chemical operations. Serdyuk confessed that Andrei Martinov used his technical knowledge to procure heavy pharmaceutical sedatives from corrupt state medical supply trucks. The predatory gang carefully ground the stolen chemical tablets into a fine white powder inside the isolated rural dacha. This toxic chemical substance was systematically dissolved into sweet juices or warm tea before being offered to the unsuspecting victims. The calculated drug did not contain enough lethal dosage to kill immediately, but aimed entirely at paralyzing the victim's physical willpower. Once the helpless pensioner entered a deep state of chemical stupor, the athletic brothers carried them toward the dark luxury sedan. The victims were driven across the frozen district lines, while hidden beneath heavy canvas tarpaulins in the back seat. Upon arrival at the isolated country estate, the victims were forced to sit at the rough table to sign blank paper sheets. These signed blank documents were later transformed by Martinov into official-looking cooperative shares and real estate purchase deeds. With the legal paperwork fully secured, the calculated ringleader directed the immediate physical elimination of the elderly witness. The brutal execution process required multiple gang members to participate simultaneously, binding their destinies together through shared capital crimes. One brother held the helpless veteran's shoulders down, while Serdyuk and Martinov pulled opposite ends of the pink rubber tourniquet. The horrific mechanics of the execution ensured that no single individual could claim innocence during potential state prosecution. The accomplices further revealed the calculated deception used during the brief and mysterious disappearance of Nikolai Gagauri. Gagauri was an acquaintance who made the fatal mistake of telling Andrei Martinov about his 12,000 rubles car fund. Martinov immediately devised a trap, instructing a female associate named Irina Buklova to post a fraudulent car advertisement. The gang lured Gigauri all the way to Arkhangelsk, promising him immediate delivery of a pristine, low-mileage luxury sedan. When the buyer arrived with his cash packed inside his coat, the predators intercepted him under the guise of state officials. They escorted the victim to a rented flat, where they immediately introduced heavy sedatives into his clear glass of water. Once Gigauri became physically helpless, they stripped his pockets of the 12,000 rubles and his official identity files. To cover their bloody tracks across the state, Martinov forced a gang member to compose a fake telegram to the family. The false message was deliberately sent from an Arkhangelsk telegraph office, designed entirely to delay any local militia search operations. The predators then bound Gigauri's feet with a heavy iron weight before casting his body deep inside the desolate northern swamp. As the full scale of the calculated death conveyor lay fully exposed, Valery Zemlyanov finalized the capital murder charges. The comprehensive case files contained over 30 forensic slide reports, proving the physical participation of all 6 captured predators. The state ballistic and chemical analysis explicitly linked the specific dacha tools to the ligatures on the 3 tragic throats. Despite the overwhelming mountain of forensic physical evidence, Andrei Martinov absolutely refused to sign a single confession sheet. The cold ringleader maintained his rigid posture, showing no emotion, as detectives displayed the recovered military decorations of his victims. The official state prosecutor finalized the ultimate indictment documentation, transferring the 6 captured individuals to the regional Supreme Court. The systematic death conveyor had finally reached its absolute end, leaving behind a cold trail of stolen savings and broken lives. The Volgograd Regional Supreme Court convened inside a cold, vaulted chamber, where state prosecutors prepared to unveil the massive mountain of forensic evidence. In the center of the room, a large iron-barred cage held the 6 captured predators, their featureless white heads illuminated by harsh overhead lights. Andrei Martinov stood near the front bars of the enclosure, maintaining his rigid, defiant posture as the state indictment was read aloud. The state prosecutor unsealed the primary evidence boxes, lifting the dirty pink rubber medical tourniquet for the entire Judicial Council to examine. Chemical analysis reports verified that the fabric of the rope contained heavy traces of the exact pharmaceutical sedatives used on the victims. The court then displayed the recovered military decorations of Mikhail Troponin, including the star medal that symbolized his survival at brutal Rezev. The dynamic testimony of the gang's youngest members explicitly described how Martinov selected lonely pensioners by monitoring local property registration offices. They watched for elderly citizens who recently liquidated assets, utilizing state records to plan their fraudulent documentary film and cooperative schemes. When the criminal classmate, Serdyuk, took the stand, his shaking voice described the final terrified moments of veteran Mikhail Troponin. The old man had put on his finest parade uniform, weeping with pride before the false camera, completely oblivious to the tightening loop. The false filmmakers waited until the chemical sedatives fully paralyzed his limbs before executing the final, brutal strangulation inside the dacha. Forensic medical examiners took the podium, utilizing skull-joint photo superimposition to confirm the exact identity of the swamp victim, Nikolai Gigauri. The expert analysis detailed the structural fractures caused by the heavy iron weights bound to the victim's feet before his disposal. Irina Buklova wept hysterically in the gallery as her fraudulent role in composing the fake car advertisements was fully exposed. She admitted that the entire scheme was orchestrated by Martinov to secure Gigauri's 12,000 rubles without delivering a vehicle. The state prosecutor turned toward the silent ringleader, demanding to know how a respected family man could operate a death conveyor. Andrei Martinov remained completely motionless inside the iron cage, refusing to offer a single word of regret or explanation. His cold, unyielding indifference sent a wave of quiet horror through the crowded courtroom, sealing his status as a remorseless apex predator. The Supreme Court panel retired to their private chambers to deliberate, leaving the room filled with an anxious, freezing silence. Hours ticked away slowly as the families of the tragic victims waited in the dim corridor, clutching old photographs of their lost fathers. The heavy iron bell of the courthouse finally rang, signaling that the Judicial Council had reached their ultimate consensus. The crowd filed back into the vaulted chamber, their heavy winter boots stamping damp tracks onto the cold stone floor planks. The chief judge unsealed the thick, typed document packet, the paper rustling softly through the silent, expectant air of the court. All 6 defendants were commanded to stand upright inside the iron enclosure to receive their final official state sentencing document. Andrei Martynov was found fully guilty on 3 counts of capital aggravated murder and systematic fraudulent exploitation of state citizens. The calculated ringleader was sentenced to the absolute maximum penalty under Soviet law: life imprisonment inside a harsh regime isolation colony. The criminal classmate, Serdyuk, along with the athletic primary execution brother, received identical life sentences for their personal active participation. The remaining 3 accomplices were handed maximum long-term sentences ranging from 12 to 15 years inside strict labor detachments. As the guards cleared the enclosure, the families of the veterans wept quietly, their long nightmare finally reaching its absolute judicial conclusion. The calculated death conveyor that targeted the pride and savings of Volgograd's elderly was permanently dismantled by the state authorities. The heavy wooden doors of the Volgograd Supreme Court chamber swung open slowly, releasing a freezing draft into the dim concrete hallway outside. State Guard humanoids standing rigidly along the concrete walls shifted their weight, their heavy leather holsters creaking rhythmically in the cold silence. Andrei Martynov was the first to step through the threshold, his seamless white head held straight under the gaze of the armed escorts. The heavy iron links of his handcuffs dragged along the stone floor planks, producing a sharp, metallic clinking that echoed down the corridor. Directly behind him walked the criminal classmate Serdyuk, his featureless white shoulders slouched deeply as heavy guard hands shoved him forward forcefully. The remaining execution brothers followed in a tight line, their movements heavily restricted by the severe iron restraints anchoring their bodies together. The tactical escort group guided the condemned men down a steep flight of stone stairs leading toward the rear courtyard exit. The air inside the lower stairwell was damp and freezing, causing the officers' heavy breath vapors to completely obscure the dim bulbs. At the bottom of the steps, a heavy iron security gate rattled loudly as a guard inserted a massive brass key. The iron gate swung inward to reveal the bleak rear courtyard, where a large black prison transport vehicle sat idling heavily. Thick white exhaust smoke billowed into the dark winter night, completely obscuring the iron steps leading into the rear cell compartment. The state prosecutor stood near the vehicle's rear doors, holding the final typed sentencing record inside a thick cardboard file folder. A senior transfer officer stepped forward to receive the documentation, his featureless white fingers verification checking the official state stamps. Martynov was forced up the iron stairs first, his heavy leather boots slipping slightly on the frozen white ice crust. He entered the narrow, windowless metal cell inside the truck, the heavy steel door slamming shut behind him with a deafening crash. The remaining 5 accomplices were systematically loaded into adjacent individual compartments, their iron chains rattling against the interior metallic walls. The heavy rear padlocks of the transport truck were turned and locked, securing the dangerous predators within the mobile isolation box. The driver engaged the heavy gears, and the massive black vehicle slowly rolled out of the judicial courtyard into the midnight blizzard. Inside his dark crime studio, MC introduced the bleak destination of the transport, a maximum security facility located deep in the northern district. The vehicle traveled for 18 hours straight across frozen, desolate territories, heading toward a strict regime isolation colony surrounded by concrete walls. The transport vehicle finally arrived at the massive iron gates of the isolation facility, where armed wall guards monitored the perimeter. The giant steel gates opened inwards with a deep mechanical groan, allowing the prison truck to enter the bleak concrete courtyard. Harsh white searchlights immediately swept across the vehicle's roof, slicing through the falling snow and illuminating the dark walls. The rear padlocks were unclasped by strict regime prison guards, wearing thick gray coats and heavy felt winter boots. Andrei Martinov stepped out into the freezing courtyard air, his featureless white face tilted up toward the towering concrete guard towers. The prison guards aggressively stripped the inmates of their civilian garments, replacing them with coarse, numbered gray convict uniforms. Martinov stood perfectly still, as a heavy identification number plate was stamped directly into the fabric of his rough tunic. The 6 captured predators were separated completely, guided down separate underground concrete corridors toward their permanent isolation cells. The heavy iron door of cell number 42 creaked open, revealing a bleak stone interior with a single narrow barred slit. Andrei Martinov walked inside, and the steel door slammed shut, sealing the apex predator inside an eternity of silence and regret. The iron doors of cell 42 sealed the cold ringleader away forever, but state investigators still had a final financial puzzle to solve. Valery Zemlyanov returned to his stark wooden desk, meticulously cross-referencing the seized ruble ledgers to trace the missing thousands from the bank accounts. A secret audit of regional financial records revealed that Martinov had established multiple anonymous corporate bank accounts using forged state identification cards. The calculated predators used these shadow cooperative accounts to rapidly launder the cash stolen from the 3 murdered elderly pensioners. Zemlyanov directed a complete freeze on all Lokia financial funds associated with the fake commercial shipping venture in the district. Militia officers marched into the main city bank branch, hand-delivering the official judicial seizure documentation to the head bank tellers. The Central State Bank clerks immediately stamped the accounts as frozen, permanently halting the movement of 28,000 dirty rubles. Every single asset belonging to the 6 captured predators was confiscated by the state to provide financial restitution to the victims' families. The unique silver family relic stolen from Vasily Bondarev's apartment was officially returned to his grieving son, Oleg. Oleg Bondarev clutched the heavy sacred frame tightly against his wool overcoat, weeping silently inside the dark militia reception office. The recovered military medals belonging to war veteran Mikhail Tropenin were placed inside a secure vault at the Regional History Museum. The tragic case files were compiled into a final massive volume, officially documenting the complete destruction of the Kamyshin death conveyor. Senior investigator Viktor Volkov filed the comprehensive documentation deep within the Central District Criminal Archives, locking the dark secret away. The desolate winter pines of Sestrenki village returned to their silent state, the frozen earth covering the historical trauma forever. Inside his dark crime studio, the lead investigator slowly leaned forward over the black desk to deliver his final cautionary message. The ruthless exploitation of these vulnerable state citizens serves as a harsh historical reminder of the predatory dangers hiding in plain sight. In periods of profound economic anxiety and social change, the collective shield of mutual trust remains the absolute all-only defense. Do not allow easy promises of wealth to cloud your rational guard, because the wolves always dress in the garments of state officials. The systematic investigation of 1990 is complete, but the permanent ink of these tragic lives remains printed on our consciousness. Verify every stranger, guard your lonely neighbors, and never forget that true crime leaves a permanent shadow over history. The silent forest retains the final echoing memories of those who survived the global war, only to fall to domestic greed. The Regional Justice Division fulfilled its strict duty, ensuring that the cold walls of the isolation colony became a permanent cage. Inside cell 42, the ticking of the grand clock has ceased, replaced by the endless heavy stillness of a life sentence. The stolen paper rubles are gone, but the Golden Star medal remains a clean testament to an honor that no predator could steal. The community of Kamyshin moved forward past the terrifying conveyor, rebuilding their broken trust through systematic vigilance and collective care. Valery Zemlyanov's rigorous investigation notes remain preserved within the regional Supreme Archives, serving as a dark warning blueprint for future generations. The state prosecutor's official legal records are permanently closed, the ink fully dried on the definitive indictments of the 6 captured individuals. The long trail of calculations, sedatives, and cold executions has reached its absolute final destination inside the dark halls of history. Thank you for walking through the deep shadows with true crime, where the real horrors are systematically unmasked and brought to justice. This was the grim chronicle of the Savings Hunters, an extraordinary narrative that will remain permanently printed on the historical records forever.